Just got through filming a national news show, conservative show, discussing the bills that are coming down. You would not believe some of the legislation that is being proposed, what many would say, anti-American, anti-family. And we have none other than Claudette Smith. I've seen her in person and in private with people in the community, a mover and shaker that fights for families. She's the real deal. And any friend of hers is a friend of mine. You're about to meet them as well. But to start things off, hello, Claudette. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Brent. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Now, there's a runoff election in process for place 4 of City Council right there in Amarillo. And of course, we are streaming live as we are recording this interview. Claudette, you've been fighting for families, and many would say more than elected politicians there. So many city council meetings that you have been at, an uncover of truth, and you stand strong. You're known for your toughness, and there's some incredible people that are endorsing you. You know, you've been to hundreds of city council meetings. You didn't have to do that, but you've done that over and over again because you really do care about Amarillo and Amarillo issues. And of course, it's wonderful people. You know, it's very important, folks, that you have a woman's voice on your city council. One of your ads states that telling the truth is telling the truth. And sometimes shedding a light on disturbing things is unpleasant. But for the most part, Claudette, you're known for what you stand for. And you're for, Amarillo families.
I talked to Claudette myself. I wanted to know for myself who this person was and what she was about. When I sat down with Claudette, I didn't hear her smearing someone else. This was 2 years ago. I didn't hear her smearing someone else. I didn't hear negative attitudes coming from her. I heard positive things about how she could make Amarillo better, how we could clean up anything that might be a little leaning toward corrupt. But her integrity, her love for the city, and her willingness to get out there and fight when no one else would really impressed me. I felt like we had a kindred spirit there, and I have so much respect for Claudette. And I'm so glad as an older woman to see a younger one willing to step up and get into this and get things straight and keep things good in Amarillo.
When I was in politics, I did everything. I ran a state party and then I ran campaigns. When I left politics, I was the chief of staff to the United States Congressman in Washington, D.C. And I didn't even vote for a decade. I was so disenchanted. And I had a friend of mine and she would call me and yell at me, not at me, about what was going on. And I told her, I said, look, you have got to either let this go or get involved. You're going to give yourself an aneurysm. And I found myself doing the same thing a few years ago. And that's why I got back involved. Every single one of us needs to exercise every right we still have while we still have it.
As Tip O'Neill once said, it all starts local. And so people don't realize the depth of what that actually means. I mean, everything starts locally and then it rolls up or downhill, whichever way you want to put that, to Washington. And so everything starts here. And we have to be very mindful when we're electing officials to office, because they make all of the important decisions, from anything from which the parks that your kids play at, to the grocery stores that you shop in, to possibly where you might be working at. The city council, it is a limited government and it's not a very powerful government, but they do make a lot of decisions that affect each and everyone's everyday life. And so people don't realize how powerful that is until they get older and they start having to write checks for taxes, until they take their children to the park and see something obscene happening in the park in front of their children, or until they, just all those little things that make up your everyday life. People don't realize how important it is to get out and vote. That's why it's important. There's a lot of people that are upset right now, or have been, not anymore, but as of recent, they were very upset about a lot of the things that have been happening in our city, such as we have a civic center that they were trying to build. They put it to a vote. The voters said no. The previous administration, twice. The previous administration really tried hard to push that through, and issue certificates of obligation anyways, or tax revenue bonds anyway, and push it through regardless of the fact that the voters had said no. And so there's a lot of things that have been happening. I mean, Our budget with this last administration went from 250 million to $500 million. And they were only in there, I think, for what, like 6 years? I mean, that's a huge increase there in such a short amount of time. And so people are seeing it. They're seeing it in their tax bills. They're seeing it in their water bills. They're seeing it in their drainage fees. They're seeing it in their everyday lives. I mean, when they have to write that check, that's the most important thing. That's what you need to be thinking when you're writing that check is, I really need to get out and vote because I'm tired of writing these checks. I'm tired of the ever increasing taxes and the water bills and just all of the nonsense. And so that it's just important. It's really important that everybody gets to the polls and vote. Otherwise, I mean, I just don't want everyone to sit idle through this runoff election because Cole and Tom and Don are great men and they got elected already. We still need 2 other strong conservative voices in order to finish this election off and to complete this council to keep Amarillo moving forward in the right direction.
Folks, it's very, very important that you have the right people in position, because no matter what happens in DC, there's a lot of local authority that can abide by or oppose, for better or for worse, in the city of Amarillo and all over the country. Victoria, as a young lady, how important is it that we have conservative legislation in Amarillo?
It's extremely important. When you see today, especially a lot of people who are my age voting, we seem to only care about federal elections. We think that that's the big deal, and really it matters locally. Local politics is going to monitor safety, crime levels. Local politics is going to monitor taxation and what is really coming out of your paycheck. Things that actually really affect your day-to-day life. And that's something that unfortunately a lot of people my age don't necessarily think too much about, because with social media, we look more at the federal politics, but it's extremely important to get conservative women in office in Amarillo, Texas. Women's perspectives are extremely important and very informed and care a lot, especially in local politics, about our schools, how this is impacting family life, household life, what this looks like as a community. And it's extremely important to get those opinions put into local offices, and it's important to vote those into office and pay attention to who you're voting for. And it's important to be informed on those decisions. It's vital. It's more important than voting for the president. And we need to start changing our perspectives and being more geared towards local elections.
Did you ever think you'd see days like these in our country? And is there hope?
There's always hope. As long as there's God, there's always hope. But I'd like to tell a quick story, if it's okay.
Please.
My senior year in high school, we didn't have the pre-AP classes, but we had college-bound classes. And I had a phenomenal high school history teacher. She was a DAR. She went back to the Daughters of the American Revolution, and she went back to Valley Forge every year and did the enactments. And we were talking about the difference between what we have in the United States, a constitutional republic, and communism. And she talked about how Russia was taken over by the communists, not the Bolshevik revolution, but the communist takeover. They took over Russia without firing a shot.
Right.
You know how they did it? With media and lies. And Pravda was the media arm of the communist movement. Do you know what Pravda means in Russian?
What?
It means truth.
It means what?
Truth. It means truth. What do we hear in the media today? Oh, we're telling you the truth.
Right.
But it's not.
No.
And I was so incensed with that. And I thought, how could a whole nation of people not know their own history, listen to lies and not realize it was lies? But if they told it long enough and loud enough, people would believe it. That's happening nationally. It's also happening sometimes locally. And we've got to be not woke, but awakened. And the second thing I want to share with you is that I became awakened because of a story. I was talking to someone, a class, and I told them that the little church that I was talking about God didn't need that little church needed God. And an old man from the back of the room, he's probably my age now. I was about 28. And he said, well, where were you in 1962 when they took prayer out of the schools? Well, I was born 9/1/62. I was in my mother's womb. And I
Wow.
said, well, I was in my mother's womb. Where were you? In 2020, I kept hearing, you're not in your mother's womb anymore. And that's true for any of us that are listening. We're not in our mother's womb. Things are happening in our country that I just heard Eric Metaxas speak about this.
Yes.
We are very similar in position to where the churches, especially in the United States, are where the German churches were when Nazis took over Germany. If we don't wake up now, if those of us that have a moral foundation, that have a conservative ideology, if we don't wake up and get busy and get out and vote and get active and run for office, we can lose our country the way Germany lost theirs. And I don't want that to happen. There's hope if we each get up and do something, and if we take someone with us.
Well said. Remember the tactics, folks. Reckless spending. Crash the system with reckless spending. Blame capitalism. Instill socialism. Declare a dictator. Disarm the people. Massacre dissenters. Happened in Russia. Happened in Germany. Happened in China. Happened in Venezuela. Are we going to let it happen here? You got to make your voice heard at a local level. Peggy Thomas, how important is it that people get out and vote right now?
Well, I heard one man say that it's 7,000 times more powerful, your vote, 7,000 times more powerful in a local election than it is in a national election. And if only 30%, would it be 70 times 7, 49,000% more important to go out and vote on this runoff election? And to be involved, I like what Victoria had to say. And this is the example that Claudia has set, that she has demonstrated, not just in words, but she's gone out to those city council meetings. And I'll say, go to the AISD meetings and go to the Board of Regents meetings too. We all need our citizens there to help us hear the things we need to hear and do the things that we need to do. And people supporting us in those meetings, people knowing what's going on in the community is so extremely important. But follow Claudette's example, get involved, and consider in 2 years running yourself. But for today, go out and vote and take 2 people with you. I've said we need you and 2. If we get you and 2 of your friends to go out and vote, then Claudette will be sitting in that seat in place 4.